Well, good morning. Welcome, everybody, to our monthly step guide meeting. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Please join me in prayer for an open mind and open heart. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps in you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in prayer for serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Well, as you know, those of you who have been with us, and for those of you who haven't, this may be your first time. This is not a meeting of any 12-step fellowship. It's a meeting, a gathering of people, usually in some form of 12-step fellowship. Doesn't matter which one, who have some experience being a sponsor and or a step guide. For me, they're ideally the same person, but experientially, in my own experience, they were different people. I had a sponsor. I've had only two in 38 years, one for about 28, the last one for 10 years. I believe in local sponsorship, but I've never done the steps with my sponsor. It's not ideal, but it is my experience. I engaged 4 different people over a 20-year period to do the steps 4 different times. It's just my experience. So I coined the phrase, I do believe I did, step guide, a person who guides me through the steps like a project manager. Several years ago, wow, I don't even know how long, maybe 15. So if you have sponsor questions and or experiences or step guide experiences or questions, or you want some clarification on the assignments so that you can help other people, that's what this is all about. The only qualification is that you're exposed to the step process and you want to help people, or you think you might want to help people. You may not even be actually helping people, but you have this gnawing inclination that you may be and or you want to be prepared when somebody asks you to help them. All right.
I'm working with 2 people right now. We're both kind of just started. One of them, she's a girl, I'd say about 30 years old, recently moved to the area. And she had 6 months when she came into AA. This was, I would say I met her in January. And she asked me to take her through the steps, and we started. And we've been working together, I'd say about a month. And she's really loving AA, very curious about it and happy as a clam. But all of a sudden she discloses to me that she had THC gummies the weekend prior to us meeting. And she shrugged it off as like, I have no problem with marijuana, so that's not an issue. And she just kept talking as though she'd had crackers at a party. It was really like, to her, it was nothing. And she also, within that week, had mentioned that she and her girlfriend had gone to the South America to do ayahuasca over Christmas. So you get the idea. She didn't even ask my opinion about what I felt about it. And I was taken aback, and I'm just sort of, anyway, so I'd just like to get your feedback about that. Yeah, just leave it at that.
Well, I'm not familiar with the current conversations about gummies and ayahuasca. Mm-hmm. However, I've begun to hear conversations and vocabulary about that. I have a pretty black and white attitude that if you consciously use anything to change your mood or your consciousness in the area of a form of drug, then you've broken your abstinence in alcohol and or drug addiction. We don't get to judge other people or determine their sobriety. They do. It might be that you would want, and I'm very much looking for other people's experience, not necessarily opinions, please. But if you have an opinion that's based on some facts, that would be good. But experience is really helpful. And I don't have any experience with this other than I have a young man who has been sober for 10 years, who did the work and has just had a powerful, life-changing, his life is going in such a great direction. And for whatever reason, he did do the ayahuasca and some type of a ceremonial thing in a self-development kind of process. And he's starting his time over again. I didn't tell him to, but we had a conversation about it. And I don't believe I leaned on him at all, because that's not my job. My job is to hold up questions and to hold up his conscience and consciousness concerning sobriety and abstinence, and that he's the only determined. And how, what's the meaning of time? What's the meaning of time? Is it pride? Is it embarrassment? Is it some type of epaulette on your shoulder? Why have 20 years? Okay, how important is it to you in terms of your transparency and your rigorous honesty? So I raise questions. There might be a hint of mint in in the way I raise them. I try to be neutral as possible, but I have very strong feelings about it. But they're just my feelings for me. I don't get to project them on anybody else. As we know, the 12 steps, cultures have no rules, some suggestions, and you're an alcoholic if you say so, and you're sober if you say so.
So I just decided to keep working with her, and she's going to meetings, so I'm sure she'll be getting feedback in meetings, because if she shares that stuff, I'm sure people are going to shake their heads or whatever people are going to do.
Oh, if she shares it in meetings, she's going to get an earful.
Right.
and not as calm and as loving as mine was attempted to be.
Right. Okay. So that's what I thought. I'm just going to keep going, and her experience is her experience.
Under all circumstances, I would continue working with somebody even if they had drank alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah, and I worked with a guy who drank near beer, and he brought it to me. He said I drank. He was a semi-professional umpire in a sporting event, and they would gather after and have a drink, and he would have near beer. And I said, well, have you looked at, he said, it's near beer. It's no, there's no alcohol. It says non-alcohol. I said, have you looked at the label and looked at the contents? He said, yeah. Well, it's a 0.5%. I said, is that zero? No, it's 0.5, but it's like orange juice. Oh, okay. Next week, he says, I've had 2 near beers. The next week, he had 4 near beers. Then the next week I said, well, how you doing on the near beer? He says, oh, not relevant anymore. I had a Bud, a Budweiser. So, they'll sort it out. They'll just sort it out. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks, Herb.
Yeah. It's not an answer, but in a way it is an answer. You kind of like let them sort it out. Bill said it. There's only 2 disciplines in Alcoholics Anonymous. One is God and one is alcohol. You're either going for one or you're going for the other. Now that's about as black and white as you can get.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
Okay, great.
That's a great current question, and that's really part of like what we do here. And anybody else who has experience with that or thoughts about it, because they've read some things, so that'd be great.
Hi, Herb. Thank you for having this for us. Really been looking forward to this, and have listened to a lot of the previous recordings on this topic. I'm in your workshop presently, first time. We're in Sunday, so we're just in step 4. So my question pertains to my present sponsees that I'm working with, and my struggle. It's the core of my struggle, control, right? So my struggle with discerning, particularly around the step 4 process and the step 9, when people get stuck. How do I encourage them to continue to move through the step 4? I see already a lot of that is going to change simply because of what I'm doing with you in step 4. But I have somebody who has a step 9 with a family member that has been put off for months, and the person, when we speak, loves to share about the fabulous hike in the woods and the walk to the pond and the fish and the birds that he sees, and we're not talking program, and I'm constantly trying to weave it back into program, and how we can continue to get this, the step 9 done. I'm aware of it. I'm not sure what to say or do, or do I not say or do anything?
Well, what's your role with this person?
I'm the sponsee. I'm sorry, I'm the sponsor.
You're the sponsor, and so he's using you as his step guide. Yes?
Yes.
And he's on step 8 and 9.
Yes, step 8 and 9. I mean, we've already worked in 10, 11, and 12. We've already done that work because we don't wait.
Yeah. So your role, if you've had the conversation with him, and you might want to ask him, well, what's my role here now with you in your 8th and 9th step? And I say it 8th and 9th because they're complementary. If you're not actually doing your amend, you're in your 8th step. All right? Because you have a list, but you're not doing anything. So you're only in 9th step when you're actually knocking on the door or sitting in front of somebody or talking to them on the telephone. So ask him, what do you want from me with regard to helping you complete your 9th step? Don't impose it on him, but ask him. And I'm assuming he's going to say, well, I don't know what he's going to say, but if he wants help, then give it to him. The help that I would suggest is that you be an accountability partner. There's 2 questions. Where are you in your amends process? What's your next amend? And what's your plan to make it? So I suggested to people, because it was my experience, I had a list of these cards that I had of amends to make. And my step guide had suggested that I pray. Once I finished an amend, I pray, which is going to be the next amend. And then I have a specific plan. I'm going to call Tuesday. I'm going to call Friday. I'm going to write a letter. Whatever the plan is, that it's a specific plan that I tell my sponsor, step guide. And then my step guide is invited to ask me on a perhaps weekly basis. That was his suggestion, my step guides. And so after 2 or 3 weeks of asking me regularly, and I say, wow, I'm really busy. I'm so willing. I'm really busy. After about 2 or 3 weeks of that response to him, because I wasn't doing my amends because I was really busy, but I was willing. He said, willingness without action is fantasy. All right. You've heard me say it. Yeah. And I was in a little bit of pain, so I made the amend, and the pain went away, and it so motivated me that then I became consistent. But my question to the people who call me, especially if they're in 8 and 9, but actually, even if they're in any part of the step process and I'm their sponsor and they're calling to complain about their job or their spouse or their money or their life or whatever else, I'll listen. And I might listen for 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, depending on the situation. I mean, life's in session and I want to be compassionate and helpful. But at some point, and it probably is earlier than later, because I have very little tolerance for the drama in the story. I asked them, where are they in the steps? What step are they actually working? What are they doing? And quite frankly, the conversation gets very short.
Is there
Because
any,
in fact, they're not doing anything, and or they're embarrassed to do it, or they know that where this is going, and so they take responsibility for taking the action.
sure.
Yeah.
My question is, and I don't want to be vague, so ask me if you want more specifics. Are there any good reasons not to do an amends? Obviously,
Oh,
causing more
sure.
harm is
Lots
an
of
obvious.
reasons, but that all should be taken into consideration in the 8-step planning to do the amend. That maybe it needs to be delayed for a month or 6 months or a year, or it needs to wait until God manifests an opportunity that makes sense rather than making it too artificial.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's part of the 8-step plan. It's not a legitimate part of the plan to procrastinate because you're afraid and or you don't want to do it or you're embarrassed. That's not legitimate.
Okay. Yeah, encouraging to move through that has been complicated.
What's your role? See, that's where we have to ask ourselves. This is exactly the grist for the mill for this call. Is what's your role as a sponsor or step guide? All right, you can't want it more than they do. You're not a parent or a police person. You're an accountability partner. You hold the mirror up. You ask questions. They either will or they won't. It's not your business to, quote, make them. It's actually not your business to motivate them.
So, if I can keep you a little longer, if the group will allow me. So my relationship with my sponsor is such that, I check in, maybe once a week, once every other week,
Yeah.
or more if there's stuff going on that I want to check my thoughts, because my thoughts often misguide me. But once we're at a point where somebody is no longer working steps, they're just calling to tell stories of the day, there's no more program involved. It's like reporting in. Yeah, I had a good day. I went to work. Everything went fine. Wife is fine. I mean, is that? It's almost, for me, it almost feels like it's become more like a codependent. I'm there just to talk to, and
Well, it might be, and that might be the benefit, that there's somebody that I can be connected to on a weekly or a monthly basis that I get to update myself and be accountable to. But that's a conversation, a conscious conversation to have with your companion. What do you expect from me? What will be helpful? One guy told me, I want to be your friend. I want to come and hang out. And I said, I have enough friends and I don't hang out. I never heard from him again.
right.
But that was his issue. I really meant it in all, as much as compassion as I could generate. But I don't want friends, and I don't hang out. So if that's what you want, find somebody else.
Thank you.
Yeah. Unless you want friends and you want to hang out. I know lots of sponsors who have golfing buddies and motorcycle buddies and cycling buddies and all kinds of running buddies. And I just don't do that. I never have.
Yeah, I have a God Squad. I have a group that is close, some local that I do hang out with, and I encourage that when I'm working with somebody to develop that fellowship of what you need. You will find what you need in a group if you reach out and build those relationships. I'm not necessarily, as the sponsor or the guide, that person, particularly in the new Zoom world when you actually live on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
It's not like we're going to hang out.
No, there's no rules. And you guys, each person figures out in communication with the other person what's going to be the guidelines, what's going to be helpful. Now, obviously, when you're going through the steps, it's a much more intense relationship. But I suggest to the people who want to call me sponsor, I suggest to them they call me once a week, and they literally, especially now with the COVID getting a little bit more normalized that we visit once a month, face to face. But half of them do it, half of them don't.
Right.
Yeah. But again, I have no rules about it. These are just suggestions. Some people I don't hear from for long periods of times. That's just their business, not mine.
Thank you.
All right. And I have one or two that call me every day. It wasn't my suggestion, but it's what they want and what they need. But those are the conversations that are very short from my standpoint. Once again, no rules, figure it out, have communication directly with the person, what they need and what's going to be helpful. Yeah.
Hi, Herb.
Hi.
Great to be on the call today. I called in specifically, and actually listening to other folks is already helping me a little bit.
Yeah.
I have a sponsee. I'm an FA-NA. And she is sober 20 plus years. She's an FA and not struggling to even get abstinent or stay abstinent. And what I'm wondering is, what I was looking for, I'm struggling. I'm trying to stay on my side of the street, you know what I mean? Like what can I do to help her or support her and not enable her? And should I be focusing on which step should I say, okay, let's go back and work a certain step together? Any suggestions you might have, I would love to hear today.
Well, help me again. I may have missed it if you said it, and that is, what's your relationship with her?
I'm her FA sponsor, food addict, FA sponsor.
All right.
And I'm also her step guide.
All right.
She has not gone through, but I talked to her about step guide, the step guide thing. She's not been through your program, but we're in an FA AWOL together.
All right. Yeah, wonderful. Good. No, I'm very supportive of the AWOL as the beginning of getting a panoramic view of the process and getting some tools and some traction with regard to the steps. But people need more help later.
Right.
on. So what's your communication with her about what your role is and what she wants and needs?
Well, we talk every day for 15 minutes.
Why do you do that?
That's the FA model.
No. That's a wrong reason.
Okay.
Why do you do it?
I do that to
What's the purpose of your talking? Why are you together? What's the purpose?
to talk about her food.
Okay.
Where she why she broke, if she broke.
Okay. Yeah. So it's an accountability meeting.
It's an accountability meeting.
Wonderful. Great. Good. All right. What else?
And I think my latest, what else? That's pretty much it. I don't.
You said she's working the steps in the AWOL?
Yeah, she's working the steps in the AWOL.
Do you talk about that?
We do talk about the steps. We're in the same AWOL on Monday night, so we always talk about what the assignment was, what's going. And
so you're talking about her relationship with food, and you're talking about her relationship with the steps and what she's doing. Wonderful.
Right.
That's good. Yep.
Okay. So what's happening is that she's on a target to follow the AWOL and go through all the steps. Well, I keep going, but you haven't finished. You haven't finished your step 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like she hasn't finished her step 4.
Okay. And
meaning step 5. She hasn't. Every time I've had 3 sessions with her to share her step 5, right. And we get stuck continually on this one issue. And I say,
what do you mean you get stuck?
It always goes back to her. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by we get stuck? Well, okay. Her little tiny backstory. She was married to an alcoholic, still practicing, and he just died. But the first time we did the step forward. She had a resentment towards him for continuing to drink, even though he promised her he would quit. And her big fear was, he's going to die. He's going to die. He's going to die.
Yep.
Well, he died.
Yep.
I said, so now your fear is real. What I suggested to her that she go back and say, do you have a resentment towards him because he died now? He stopped drinking, but he's dead.
Yeah. And where are you stuck? I don't hear you're stuck. I hear you're having a conversation. Where
She's
are you?
not,
Where is she stuck?
she hasn't finished it, and we haven't scheduled the 5th step, and she wants to continue on with step 8, 9. And she wants to keep up with the AWOL. She wants to go on to the other steps.
Can she do both?
I don't know.
Well, why wouldn't she do both? Do you have time to listen to the balance of her 4th step?
Yeah.
Well, make an appointment with her to do that if she wants to finish her 4th step.
Okay, so just ask her, like maybe once a week, how you doing on that 4th step? Are we gonna finish it?
I think you don't have to ask her every week. Ask her, are you planning on doing any more work? Not finishing. Are you planning on doing any more work in your 4th step?
Okay.
Do you have any outstanding issues that we need to schedule an appointment to do while you're doing the other work? Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can walk and chew gum.
Okay.
Yeah, make time for her if she wants it. Encourage her to finish a 4th step if she feels unfinished. But
I think I'm seeing the reason I thought I have to call in and ask this question today.
Yeah.
Because where we are drifting, where I feel like what's happening in our daily conversation is woe is me, poor me. Woe is me, poor me.
Her husband just died.
Well, it's been a month now. I mean, I know, isn't that hard? I mean, I feel hard-hearted, but
her husband just died.
But do I have to talk to her every day about woe is me, poor me?
No, well, no, I wouldn't do that. Although she does need to be engaged in a grief process, but you don't need
that.
To,
I have suggested that. I said
you don't need to be part of that grief process on a formal basis,
right?
But ask her.
I think with the food, what's happening is I'm hearing her say, well, he couldn't do it. And it's just like me. I can't do it with the food. He couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Well, all right.
And I've been trying to get her.
Excuse. She's using an excuse. So what's your role with her?
Well, to hold her accountable. But I guess what I wanted to support her, I want her to suggest that I want to focus her. I want to point her into one of the steps to say, for her to see the truth.
All right. So the question would be the solution going forward long term is the steps. Are you complete with your 4th step?
Okay.
So she can do the self-pity thing for a minute or 2 or 5. You determine how long you listen to the drama.
Yeah.
All right. And then say, okay, I got that. Now you're in a grief process. You really probably need some help from your local church or your local therapist or whatever to go through the grief process. What are your plans to finish your 4th step? Or are you finished with your 4th step from your standpoint, not from your standpoint, but from her standpoint?
Okay.
And then, so then, honey, are we complete with the 5th step? Oh, and what work did you do, and how do you what experience did you have with your 6th and 7th step? So just ask her the questions to make sure she knows where she is, or where she thinks she is, or where she wants to be, and then support her in that. Because that in the conclusion to the 9th step is where she begins to really connect to our way of life and the world of the spirit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I even talking about this, I feel like I want to cry about it. And I think that's just me accepting that I am so powerless to help her. Until she believes it's possible, I can't help her.
But the death of her husband, whether he was a drinking alcoholic or not, is creating an emotional fog in her that really won't clear up for several months. I thought with the vitality of my own spiritual program when my wife died 4 years ago that I'd deal with it. I'd read the books on grief. I'd go through the process on grief and I'd be okay in 6 months. Well, I read the books and I went through the process and I wasn't okay in 6 months.
Yeah.
It took 2 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah. So it's a balancing act though for you. And the balance is be the sponsor and the step guide, accountability partner, at the same time with the velvet glove of compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. And holding the attitude that I really want to help her. I mean, the very fact that you had the consciousness to say, I just want to cry. I mean, it means that you're really connected and you really want to help and you know it's really sad and you feel very powerless. And that's really because you are.
And, I identify because I was a chronic relapser for many, many years.
There you go.
So I identify with that helplessness, hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I just try to want to show her that there's another way in the light, there's another way to live.
Can you say that exactly to her the way you said it just now?
Yes, I can.
Wow. I mean, she'll probably be able to hear that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And Bill actually wrote a book called The Language of the Heart. That's exactly what you're communicating right there.
Hi, Herb.
Hi.
So a couple quick questions. I just want to thank you for permission to be powerless. That sounds crazy, but permission to be powerless when it comes to my sponsees.
Yeah.
I had a sponsee for almost a year, and we were kind of following your program that Joe's taught me, listening to your videos and going through the assignments. And I had a sponsee get all the way through step 4. She had just finished her sex inventory, and then we're about to schedule her step 5, and she dropped out. And I was okay, even though I did schedule a time with her to have kind of a closure and to at least express my suggestion, do the step 5. I know that the step 4 was so hard for her. It caused her to go out. She's in OA. Whatever, it was difficult.
It didn't cause her to go out.
Right. Okay. She was stressed out, and that was how she dealt with that process.
Much better.
Yeah. Anyway, I did request and was complete with just saying, I think it would be awesome if you could complete the step 5, that you would feel great relief, but it's up to you. It's your program, and that's all. And I was able to let it go. And, we still are in touch. There's no hard feelings. She wanted a sponsor and a step guide in one, and that's good. So my next opportunity to embrace powerlessness is my current sponsee, who's an AA, and local, had a lot of financial and other challenges and hasn't got as much time to spend. So I'm wondering if there is a quick way you recommend. I mentioned it to Joe also. If I use your book, Herb, or do you have any suggestions on kind of a structured but expedited way to get someone through the steps?
I have 3 thoughts on that.
Okay.
First, you could adopt and adapt my work in some sort of Reader's Digest form, but that would be maybe a little difficult since you've had an experience with the bigger and deeper part. The AWOL that people talk about in the FA program is a journey through the steps 1 through 12. I'm going to use a word that is not a judgmental word. It's an attempt to evaluate it without negative judgment, but it's superficial. All right. It's a look at and an experience with, but it's about an inch deep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But it's good. I'm not being critical at all. I'm saying, oh, wonderful. Do that once or twice, or maybe even 3 times to get a panoramic view of the entire picture of the process, the method. That's good. But there is actually a guy who created a distilled version of working the steps, and it's called Back to Basics. Wally P. Wally, okay. WALLYP, and literally has a book and a workbook and all the rest of it, and maybe some YouTubes and some recordings, podcasts. I don't know. I've not followed his work to that extent, but his work is very legitimate. He takes people through the steps in a day or in a weekend type thing. Again, though, if anybody thinks they've done the steps in a day or a weekend, they're delusional. They've had this panoramic view. They might have gone 4 inches or 6 inches. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to express that you're going to have some benefit, some experience, but it's not going to be what we do. Wally refers to my work as a graduate work. His is high school, mine's graduate. Not to say better or worse, just to say different.
No, yeah, I totally get it. And the benefit to me was huge.
Yeah.
Because I skipped over things the first time around, right? Like, yeah, when I went through with my AA sponsor twice, right? So I do have a Back to Basics group here locally.
So
I think Paul, I think a friend of mine, Paul OB, yeah, so I'll contact him because I think he does that too. Wonderful. So he'll know more about that. Yeah. My last question has to do with money. So there was recently, they call it a Spring Fest, Saratoga Spring Fest. It was a weekend event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, speakers, AA speakers on the 12 steps. And it was $35. And I went ahead and bought myself a ticket and one for my sponsee. She's financially challenged. I'm just curious if you have any guidelines. And I did take her to lunch. I picked her up because she had her car taken away, blah, blah, blah. So do you have any guidelines for me in terms of financial, sure. Like I never would offer to pay to get her car back, or, is there a monetary limit, or is there just, you'd be intuitive about it, or, because I know Bill was broke and constantly supporting people all the time. So I'm just curious if you have any guidelines.
What will be helpful versus enabling, which is very vague, but if you need to get some real specificity with it, some wisdom with experience, talk to some Al-Anon people. Because they make a science out of distinguishing between helping and enabling, which is in fact the question. Yeah, it's wonderful to be supportive. The man who took me through the steps had 8 children when he was first sober, and AA brought groceries to his house and left them on the front porch so that he could in fact pay attention to getting sober as well as supporting his family. And so, yeah, it's common sense, and quite frankly, common sense is very elusive. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's good. And I have some friends in Al-Anon, so that's a good guideline.
See, I have 1 or 2 experience, a man and a woman, because there are very different experiences that I can use as sounding boards to test out whether I'm being direct in the sense of helpful or direct in the sense of rude.
Well, and I have been able to delegate in terms of problems. Yeah, because I don't have kids personally, and I certainly don't have kids who are in addiction.
Yeah.
So I have other people, other resources here that I can refer her to.
That's hugely important, because that is the biggest challenge for a lot of people dealing with the children who are in some form dysfunctional, whether it's addiction or not, and how to do that. If you don't have experience, then you need to talk to people that have experience. Yeah.
Exactly. That's all I've got. Thank you so much, Herb. And AWOL, what does AWOL stand for?
A way of living.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a term they use to describe their step work.
Just a little background. I took your workshop under my sponsor, and she was my step guide 3 years ago. It was very, very powerful. I took it again and co-sponsored with another person who had done it. And we had each one of us one sponsee, and it was a really positive experience. I started this workshop, the Wednesday FA one I'm in FA with 3 of my sponsees and another woman one was the woman who had done it with me the year before. And the other 2 were first timers to this. One was in AA and FA, had first time to doing yours. And the one who was in AA and FA dropped out of FA, but continued with us for a while, but was not keeping up and then just stopped. I've tried to stay in contact with her. My frustration is, and I know it has a lot to do with my own insecurities and my wanting to fix and control and all that, but trying to get the 4 of us together. We had a mutual time, and it just wasn't happening very often. And then when we started the step 4, it ended up for over the past 3-4 weeks, only one person was coming on. But that kind of worked out because I was able to do a column 3 and a 4. Specifically, we spent a lot, a good 40 minutes together. And then the next week, another one showed up. She was the only one. And I did the same thing. And then the next week, the third one, she's an elderly person and often has technical problems getting on. So I got in touch with her and did the time. So over 3 weeks, I was able to give a lot of time one-on-one with them doing the columns and whatnot. And then, of course, we were supposed to go on to the, they all wanted, the 2 that have been my sponsee have done multiple AWOLs already and wanted the deeper, I told them of my experience, and I had done about 6 AWOLs, had gotten to the point where I was playing free cell while I was on the phone to stay awake, which was why I was very motivated to do yours and really dedicated myself and found it an incredible experience. And even doing it the second time and being co-leading gave me confidence, and it was a good experience. But this isn't being a good experience, and it's wearing on me. And I said to them when I spoke with them, I said, can you just do the list of the fears, which was the homework assignment, and maybe take one and just do the what if. And, I talked about it with my sponsor, and she suggested if they haven't done it, just say, okay, do the work. Well, that's what happened last week. Nobody had done it. So I said, okay. And now they're having complicated lives, but life is complicated for everybody. And I do try and channel you and say there's no rules and no whatevers, but it's like, I said, okay, take this 45 minutes we've set aside and start doing the work. And I got off. But I'm, tomorrow when we're or Wednesday when we're supposed to meet afterwards, I'm not sure how I'm going to react. I am getting frustrated. I want so much. And again, this is the control. This is the wanting to fix. It's always something I'm dealing with.
No, it's very legitimate, and you don't have to denigrate yourself because of your frustration. Sometimes it is frustrating dealing with people who don't have as much energy about it as you do. So there's essentially two things that you could do. One would be, okay, nobody's done the work. Let's end the call and we'll schedule it for next week. And meanwhile, do the work. You could do that. Or you could do the work right there with them on the call. And that is, at least once try that. And say, okay, Mabel, what fear do you have? And then help her process it spontaneously right there if she's willing to do that. And with the other person, so give each one of them experience of actually doing it there in the presence of other people with your experience. And maybe that will break the logjam so that they will then know what to do and how to do it for the next time.
But that's what I have been doing with them all along. I guess my question is, well, how do I deal with this frustration? And I guess it's just acceptance of my powerlessness. And again, as with always, knowing that I can't want it more than they do.
And again, trying to hold the frame of mind, the attitude is, I really want to be helpful. So
Yes.
What will be helpful? Is being helpful saying, nobody's done the work. Let's do it together. Let's either do it together or do the work and let's do it and we'll unpack it next time. So either one or the other could be helpful. I have told people, oh, you haven't done the work that I assigned? Well, call me when you have. And we hang up.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're taking the risk that, of course, they won't do the work and they won't call back.
Well, I talk with them as a sponsor. See, I'm also their sponsor, except for the one lady. So I talk to them at least twice a week on schedule. So, and I check in with them on it too, but,
Well, you could try both of those techniques, sort of say, oh, let's cancel the meeting then and we'll schedule it again, assuming that you've done some work, or then help them with the work. That would be my preferred style, is to help them with the work to get an experience to perhaps get some traction.
And as a subset, if we start getting further and further behind, though.
Behind what are they behind?
The program. Two of the three of us, three of the four of us watch your Wednesday meeting, and then we meet afterwards. So we're going to start lagging behind.
Very much so.
And how do you? But and not always the same person will be behind, and that gets difficult.
Yeah. Well, again,
I guess saying the question, how can I be helpful to you?
yes, that, and realizing each person's going to have their own path, and maybe stay connected to the workshop so they have a taste of each piece as we go further, but stay focused on where they're at in terms of any type of major commitment to the work. Okay. And it may take a year after the workshop ends for them to even finish their fifth step.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, there's no formula here other than, of course, the step process, but there's no time frame around that. The individuals I've mentioned, I've had the fastest anybody's ever gone through the steps, not in a workshop, but with me personally, is 3 months. A young man who was very highly motivated and had the time. And the longest somebody took 10 years to do from step 1 through step 9. And he needed every bit of it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Well, and with the attitude, I want to be helpful, and I'm very grateful that's not my life. Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Morning, Herb. Thank you so much for this. I have a question. They're two questions. They're kind of tied together. it comes up all the time in meetings I go to in OA, which is people ask, how do I put the food down? Now, there's differences of opinion in terms of a response to that, right? And some say if I could put it down, I wouldn't be in OA, right? So how do I get
that would be mine, as you know.
if I'm powerless, how do I put it down, right?
Right.
And then kind of related to this is I would like to hear in your words the difference between compliance and surrender. Because, you know, I just like to hear how you would share that. Thank you.
Well, that's the title of an article written by Dr. Tebow. So anybody who's interested in knowing a little bit more about historically that he's a psychiatrist who wasn't an alcoholic, was a good friend of Bill's. The difference between surrender and defiance, or compliance, actually. Compliance, surrender and compliance. But he's the one that also said that alcoholics are immature and defiant. Compliance is to go along because you're told to have a 15-minute conversation because that's FA. That's the program. That's what I'm told to do. That's what I'm expected to do. And it's good. It's good for a while. Certainly in the early years, maybe the first 5, to be compliant, doing what you're told just because you're told, not because you think it's the right thing or you feel it's the right thing or that you even find it helpful, but just doing it because you're told to do it. Acts contrary to our will. But surrender is really what Bill uses on page 30 in the big book. And he calls it step 1 in there on page 30. And he says, concede to our innermost self. For me, that's the surrender. Concede to our innermost self. Surrender, raising the white flag. I give up. I'm fully defeated. On my own, I'm fully defeated. Even in AA, I'm fully defeated. AA and my steps and the sponsor and the meetings have not, in fact, because, and the person who's exclaiming this might not actually come to the conclusion, because the meetings and the sponsor and the steps are not the solution. They're the tools to find the light, a connection with the power, which is the solution. And until somebody actually has the experience of connecting with power, they will be probably in compliance. And at some point when they connect to the power, they'll have an experience that they're surrendered, that in fact, as Bill said, they're delivered.
So that's where I think the gift of desperation can be so helpful.
100%.
Because that says, even if I'll do whatever you tell me and I'll comply, and then over time, maybe the surrender happens.
Because it's a conscious experience. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And I use the term implosion. That I was I didn't surrender and have freedom from alcohol. I was willing to quit to support my wife's recovery. I joined AA because I was willing to explore my own problem. I got a sponsor because I was willing. He gave me directions to go to meetings. I did it. He gave me directions to call him every day. I did it. He gave me directions to read the book and work the steps, but he never helped me with it. I did all of that in compliance, had no experience at all, not knowing that I didn't have an experience because I'd never had an experience. And at 4 years of sobriety, I heard a man share differently, and I did what he suggested just because he suggested it. And then I had an experience, an implosion of both understanding and of an experience with powerlessness because of the doctor's opinion. And then
was that him that helped you see that, or were you just right for that?
No, well, yes and yes. It was him who was able to point out from his experience and understanding. See, those are the two things. I needed to understand the doctor's opinion, and then I needed to connect my history to the doctor's opinion. And that was the catalyst that brought an experience.
Gotcha.
And it was deep, but it wasn't the full Megillah until 3 years later. Somebody gave me understanding of the obsession and delusion and helped me have an experience with that. And that was an overwhelming white flag surrender, defeat, implosion. So it's
Okay.
progressive. It's progressive. Does that help?
Yeah, I think people are looking for some kind of
Oh, they-
formula.
And also magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
We
they're
say
looking
just
for
put it
white
down and-
light, or they're looking for a sense of 100% relief or some type of emotional experience. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're addicts. We're
Right.
addicts.
Where does grace factor in there?
Where do you think?
Well, I think that this the decision to wave the flag, and so start with I'll do whatever, and that hopefully that transitions into I really give up. That is not something I could will myself to do.
No,
That might be what grace is.
you've heard me say it, it's very unsatisfactory, but it's a mystery. I can observe it and give it as an explanation for the mystery, but I can't explain the mystery. Why does it come when it comes? I don't know that.
That's it. So that's very helpful. We don't know that moment when you're going to move.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to tease it out just a little bit more. I believe we all have grace. I believe we live in a milieu of grace.
Okay.
And the real mystery is what allows us to consciously take advantage of it. I don't know that. Willingness clearly, action clearly, but even willingness and action assume that there's a grace to be willing and to take action. And that's where I have to stop and just be humbled and grateful and grateful for it.
Gotcha. That's great. Thank you. That's good.
It's awkward, it's unsatisfying, but it's the only explanation I have for it. Thanks so much.
Hi, Herb.
Hi.
I have actually a very concrete question, but I just want to preface it just to go back because you may not be critical or be able to verbalize critically about another program, but I can. I was in FA for 5 years. I never got recovery. All I got was controlling sponsors because how I believe it's a program of control freaks, including me when I sponsored. I was telling my sponsees what to do and questioning everything.
Yeah.
And when God brought me to your workshop, absolutely, I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was God-driven to vision. And I am so grateful, so grateful beyond belief. So now I am new at sponsoring. And I don't want to be that control sponsor that I was in FA. I don't want any of that. As a matter of fact, I had a potential sponsee text me a couple of weeks ago and asked me what my requirements were.
Right.
If I was going to be her sponsor. And I actually called her and I said, I just want you to know that question made me laugh because I understand where it comes from.
Right.
No, I am not requiring anything of you. This is your recovery. I can guide you through the steps. I can share my experience, but this is your recovery program. And whatever you want out of it, I will be there. If you want to work every day with me in the big book, I will be there. But this is your, and that's, believe me, I never heard those words before.
Right. Well, and what you're saying,
all of that.
What you're saying is, I have some experience based on what suggestions I received and took. So I will make some suggestions to you. Some of them will be pretty strong suggestions.
But I am not your mother, your teacher, your boss. I am not any of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I got taken through the steps in Vision, I recovered. Let's just put it that way. I found recovery where I never did before. But in saying that, I worked the steps twice in Vision in the past 9 months because I had a slip. It didn't lead me into a binge or anything like that, but I was perplexed why I even had that slip. So I kind of wanted to go back and kind of hone my skills a little better. And but each one that took me through the steps did it really very differently. So I'm asking you, my dear mentor, how do you actually take someone through the steps? Do you read the big book with them? Do you have them read it and you discuss it? How? How do you do it?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Well, it's a really good question. And those two that you just mentioned are styles that people use in sponsor and in step guide. And I'm just going to reiterate it because somebody might not have actually heard what you said. And that is, some people read the big book together, and some people read the big book to their sponsee and discuss it, or have the sponsee read it and discuss it. So those are three like different methodologies that different people have. I don't have that at all.
Okay.
Right. The way I was taken through the steps is I met with the man and we discussed where I was, and he gave me a specific assignment. I went away and did the assignment. I made an appointment with him to come back and to discuss the assignment. Usually, we went through each of the pages, taking a look at my highlights and his highlights, and we discussed the similarities, the differences, our understanding, and our experience with the highlights, with the information, and with each other's experience. Then we would turn to the next page. When we were finished, and each meeting was an hour to 2 hours, and it was weekly, that was a rhythm that he established, and asked me to make a commitment to that. And then he would give me the next assignment. And then I would go away and I would do the assignment of reading and highlighting and outlining and writing and praying, whatever it was. And then I would get back and we would have a 1 to 2 hour discussion on each page, on each assignment, on each understanding, and on each experience. And then eventually we did the 5th step, where he was an advocate, as I am, of one sit, doing it, whether it's 3 hours or 10 hours. I used to sit longer, and I used to sit in consecutive days. I don't do that anymore. I don't find it necessary and or good for me. So I attempt to help people shape their 5th step so that it's less than 10 hours, and I know how to do that. And now, not all of them are even requiring that. I don't mean to imply that longer is better. I don't mean to imply that at all. But I do mean to say I shape the 5th step to fit what I consider to be an effective time frame. I don't want to give any more answer than that for right now.
Okay.
Does that help?
In the rooms, they say there's an expression, work the steps like your hair is on fire. Get through them as quick as you can.
I understand that. And it is my experience the first couple times. And when I went to the men the 3rd time at 10 years of sobriety, I didn't have any hot poker at my back, but I knew that there was more. I intuitively knew that there was more development available. And when I met with the man, he said, well, let's get to it. We're going to get through this, and we're going to have a great experience, step 1 through 9, and we're going to do it in 3 or 4 months. I said, yeah, no, not so much. I want to go through it methodically and contemplatively. I want to go through it really with a very slow digestion pace. And he goes, okay, let's do that. It took 2 years.
But you already had a prior experience. So if I'm getting someone brand new to all of this,
yeah,
and they're just dying for recovery, they're dying for that.
That's why the AWOL is so important.
Okay.
The A wall that gets you through the steps so that you have a
Well,
panoramic.
the AWOL, let me just tell you, Herb, an AWOL takes at least a year or two.
Oh, I didn't know
It
that.
does- Oh, yes.
Oh,
And-
okay. Okay, I won't make any comment on that. It takes what it takes, but going through the steps quickly is what they did in the beginning. Bill and Bob went through the steps in 2 or 3 days. All right. I mean, all of them, except for finish their 9th step. They didn't know what they were doing, and they were coming off of the 6 steps of the Oxford group.
Right.
Once Bill wrote the book, he codified it into 12 steps because he wanted to squeeze out any wiggle room for alcoholics. And so, again, it's really important to go through the steps without delay, as if your hair's on fire, as if your life depends on it. That's what this man, the first man who took me through the steps, kept reiterating. And it took a year to go through it, even with
Hey,
that.
Herb, I posted up the link to the Wally P thing, that
Yeah.
back to basics. That's 4 1-hour sessions.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So, Nancy, where are we in our dialogue? I'm not sure. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here.
Well, can I just share with you how I'm doing it and tell me if you think it's okay or whatever?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you right now it's okay, but just share it with me. And
So the doctor's opinion, I read with them. And
Yeah.
because, I know for me, and I was in a program, like I said, for 5 years, I didn't know there was an allergy of the body and obsession of the mind.
Right.
I didn't get that. I
Right.
just knew I needed to put my chicken on the scale and call my sponsor and get berated if I had a break and all
Yeah.
that, So I want them to understand why they're a food addict, anyway. So
Yeah.
I do that. And then there's a couple of podcasts on A Vision for You that are really excellent about the doctor's opinion. And I encourage them to pick one and listen to it, and we could discuss it. Then we go through Bill's story, and I kind of ask them the same questions that you ask in your workshop. Did I think like Bill thought? Did I eat like Bill drank? I use some of your stuff in it.
Yeah.
And I have them read a chapter and highlight it, and then I share with them what is meaningful to me that I highlight. I mean, that's how I've been doing it. I kind of want to make sure I'm doing it okay. And
Are people having an experience?
well, I just started, Herb. We're not even on, we're barely got through step 2 just now.
Yeah.
So, with 2 different people. So, and I do the whole thing with belief and faith is a decision and belief is acceptance of that. I kind of put a lot of your stuff into it too, because it's been so helpful for me.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm going to come back to the questions, because you said that you've gone through step 1 and you've gone into step 2. So disregard any comments on step 2. This question is not about that. What is your experience with going through step 1 the way you did with the people who were participating?
Well, both of them said that they realize, that they are truly, they call it compulsive overeaters, and that they need to surrender. And they're just so anxious to work the steps, because in all the meetings, that's all you hear about, is how important it is to work the steps.
So are they having an experience with some form of powerlessness?
Yes.
So what you're doing is working.
Oh, okay.
Well, if they're
But I don't want to,
understanding,
if they're not, I don't want to take that burden on either,
well, but if they're not understanding and or having an experience, then you need to take a look at what it is you're doing so that you can change it to help them have a knowledge and an experience. I mean, you clearly said it was important for me to understand the allergy. It was important for me to understand the obsession. Once I understood the allergy, I was able to have an experience. Once I understood the obsession, I was able to have an experience. That is my experience. That is 100% my experience.
Right.
Then I had to have the knowledge first to understand, well, what does allergy mean in craving?
Right.
In the doctor's opinion, not somebody else's opinion.
Right.
What does Bill mean by the obsession and the delusion and insanity? I needed to understand the meanings first, and then I was able to apply it to my personal history and have an experience that was an explosion and an implosion at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're just doing fine.
Okay.
This is a practice. What's your resistance? What's your doubt here?
Yes, it makes me kind of emotional because, you know, being controlling is my character defect. And I came from a program that was very controlling.
Right.
And I just am I don't want to do that. I want to be very neutral. I want to just, you know, take them through the big book,
Good.
you know.
Well, and again, I'm going to now, it might sound like I'm reversing myself, but I am absolutely not. I'm merely supplementing and complementing all of the comments I've made. I'm not changing them, but I am saying you are not responsible that they understand. You are not responsible that they have an experience. All right. That's up to them, and it might be grace. I went through the steps the very first time with this man, and I had an experience understanding the doctor's opinion with regard to the body, but that was it. There was nothing else in step one that I had an experience with. The second time I went through the work, I had a different experience with obsession and the mind, etc. The third time I went through the work, all competent people leading me through the work, but it was the third time that somehow I was ripe and ready to have an experience with unmanageability. So it wasn't for lack of diligence on the part of the other people, the mechanics, the step guides. It was that I had not thought out enough to have the deeper experience. So that might give you just a little bit of relief there.
Thank you.
Well, is that the counterbalance that was, yeah. Yeah, because I didn't mean to imply that you're an inadequate step guide if they don't understand and don't experience it, which what I said could have been construed that way. I can hear it now. But there's a balance here. Certainly, I'm always, as you know, you've been with me quite a while. I'm always fine-tuning my approach to get it a little better. How can I help them hear it? How can I help them experience it? And you guys give me feedback that helps me fine-tune the way I approach it, or the models that I use, or the metaphors that I use, or sometimes using your experience so that it can be more relevant to the different people rather than just relying on my experience. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, wonderful dialogue. And see, with the attitude of, I don't want to control, but I really want to help, then you will. Then you will. You'll be helpful, but you won't be helpful as this year, as 10 years from now, when you look back, you go, oh my God, I was so like I didn't know what I was doing. Well, that's because you didn't know what you were doing. And 10 years from now, you will have lots more experience of practicing.
My notes.
And well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I've got bookshelves filled with folders.
Thanks, sir.
I hope that's helpful to everybody, because that really is the spirit of it. We want to be helpful. We're very imperfect, and we're going to learn, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to get better, and we're going to get better, and we're going to get better.
Hi, Herb.
Hi.
Hi. I was so looking forward to this meeting today because I have a big issue. I'm facilitating a small group for the first time that I put together. We're all going through your workshop this year, right now, and there's 8 of us. two of the people in the group are really struggling with the idea of a higher power. And I've been listening to you all this session, and I also know a lot about what you say. I'm powerless over whether or not they get it. My question is, how can I be helpful without being condescending or judgmental? Because it wasn't an issue for me. So, you know how you could only share your own experience. And so here are these two gals that say, both of them really have a hard time with how much the big book uses the word God, even though I've gently encouraged them to replace it with mystery and spirit and that kind of stuff.
Wonderful.
I'm flummoxed and I'm nervous. So there's that.
Well, the 12 and 12 has a wonderful suggestion in step 2. It says, if they have a problem with the God or the higher power word, have them use the group as their.
Yeah, one of them doesn't want to use the group. I already suggested that.
All right. Well, what do they want to use?
This person does know that there's some sort of force, an outside
Then
force.
have her use the word force.
Yeah.
There's a life force. Dr. Berger uses organismic life force. Organismic, that the acorn becomes the oak tree. What is that transaction? The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Well, of course it doesn't. The sun doesn't move. The earth moves.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective. We're
also not on that yet. We're only at the part tonight or tomorrow where we're talking about, am I convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success?
That's a very, very good point to make, as you're making it right here, is that and somebody mentioned it earlier, it's only when your hair's on fire, it's only when you're desperate that you know that you're going to suffer and then die if you don't find a solution, then you're going to be willing to kind of explore a solution. So that's a really good point.
You've said during this meeting today that you ask questions of them.
A lot.
I know, and I don't want to be rude to my group or confrontational, but I kind of feel like saying, are you powerless? You know, and like, how do I do that in a gentle way, or even if that's even the right question?
Boy, that's a art form. I was on the call with a guy. I didn't know really that much, but right away I could hear that he was whining and he was complaining and he was all swimming in self-pity. And I was rude and confrontational and directive, like a 4x4 across the nose of a donkey. And the phone went silent for a while. And I said, I just threw a bucket of cold water on you, didn't I? He said, well, yeah, I've never been spoken to that way. I said, well, are you thinking about what I said? I said, and he said, well, yeah, let me call you back. I thought, well, he's gone. Nope, a week later, he called me back. He said, thank you. He said, you woke me up. Yeah, now I took a risk of pissing him off. And so it's about experimentation and balance. Going back to what I was talking about with Nancy, do you really want to help? You can't help them by enabling them. Oh, you poor dear, I understand that. Tell me more about your, oh my God, I'm not a therapist, sorry. I'm not, as many of you know, it's a good thing.
It would be easier if I was working with these people one-on-one. That's the other thing. There's 8 of us in the group, and I don't want to. I can see. I can't really be that way. I can't be your way.
Trust your instincts.
Okay.
You've got lots of time in the program. You've got lots of exposure and experience with the steps and the workshop dynamic, but don't try to be Herb.
No.
Be Kathy and trust the instincts. And you could experiment, incrementally with whatever it is that you are sensing that will be helpful. And then you'll find out whether it is. I've made mistakes publicly with the workshop and had to publicly apologize. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're just finding our way. I love what you say. My only desire, I have no rules. My only desire is to be helpful.
Yeah, right.
And that was kind of like the way that I started this group in January.
Yeah, and some people need arms wrapped around them, and other people need a 4x4 across the nose. Yeah.
And the other thing you said today is I can't want it more than they do, and especially when you always talk about powerlessness. Like I'm powerless about whether they get it or not. Like I think that the need for power is a deal breaker. Like unless you get some idea of a power bigger than you, it's kind of like that's it, right?
Well, but Bill is, yes, that is true, but Bill is very gentle, page 47. Are you willing? That's the key cornerstone. Yes, do you believe, or are you willing to believe? All right, and that's where you go back to where you came on and said about the desperation. People really need to have run out of options. Not thinking about it, but experientially. I've really tried everything that I'm aware of and nothing has worked. Okay, so are you willing to believe in the possibility of a force in the universe that's available? Is there some possibility of a solution that is very mysterious?
Okay, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
I have a really short big book related question. Where does it say either God is everything or God is nothing?
Page 53.
Thank you.
But
because
see,
that's taking it one step farther.
It's very much. 47 is very gentle. It's got a fallback position. Page 53 doesn't.
Right.
God is or God isn't. What is your choice? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Herb.
I just had a comment on an earlier person on the call. It was Matthew, I think, who mentioned that when he has sponsees, sometimes they want to talk about their hike and their this and their that. And that's a big issue for me because I don't want to get sidetracked if I have time and I'm planning to do the steps with somebody. I don't want to get sidetracked. And as newcomers often have a lot of drama, of what's going on in their life. And so what I do before I start sponsoring somebody is I say, we're going to meet from 2 to 3 and we're going to talk about the step that we're working on. And if you want to talk about something else, tell me beforehand and we'll either tack on 15 minutes or we'll make another appointment for that. But my time is going to be, I want to work on the step. And of course, it's not perfect, but that helps me a lot. And I just thought I'd throw it out there.
And the bottom line of what you're saying, first of all, 100% endorsement is be clear in your communication as to what you expect and what they want and need and expect.
Right.
And have that up front. Yeah, no, that's great.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Yes, I have a question, just a clearing up question. Do you think, what's the difference between a feeling and a character defect?
Tell me why you're asking the question.
All right, I will. I have a sponsee and she is gone through the 4th step after many years of not coming further with another sponsee. And she phoned me and said she's so frustrated because now she have gone through the 4th step with this other woman and they don't have time to go on to the 5th step and 6th step. And she has found 18 character defect and she started to become so depressed. And I said, well, I think you're doing something wrong here, but it's not up to me. But of course, when you find 18 character of defect and
well, first, I'm going to stop you there.
All right.
The conversation. Well, no. I just want to understand. You said they finished their 4th step?
Yes, and she is becoming depressed, so she
Oh, wait,
phoned
wait,
me.
wait. They
Mhm.
finished their fourth step, but they don't have time to do their fifth step? What does that mean?
They have time, but okay, she have two sponsors. She have two sponsor, me and another one. And I've said you can only work with one at a time, and she have done that. She have worked with the other one, and this other woman don't have time for her to listen to her fifth step or go on to fifth.
So why
So
doesn't she do the fifth step with you?
yeah, so I said we can do that if you just tell the other lady that we will do that. Because she says she need to do it because she's stuck with all these character defects she have found.
Wait. Character defects are step 6.
That's what I want to clear up because she says she have found.
Wait. Clear it up. Do
Okay.
step 5. Have her do step 5 with somebody.
Okay, so you've done step 4, and I say I can listen to step 4, and I guess that's step 5 we're doing then when she's because I think it's very important you continue when you have done the 4th step, that you continue, you don't wait around for somebody have time to listen to you or not. When you put in a lot of work, you put in a lot of work.
You do the 4th step, you finish it. You do the 5th step, you finish it. Then you do the 6th and 7th step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, when she say she have found so many default about herself, 80 points, she say. I was like, oh my God, that's many, but okay. But don't keep on sort of looking at that all the time. And if you want, you can come and I can hear it, but don't pull yourself down with it because she start to get depressed just looking at all these negatives.
Sure, of course.
So I said something which I not sure I should, but I said, in the meantime, until we meet next week, I'm sure you have some positive thing about you which can lift you up a little bit. For example, you have humor, you're always on time that I know about, and try to, be kind with yourself. Is that something you can say?
Well, you did say it. It's wonderful because you used your instincts, your intuition to try to help her. So it's not my style, but it is your style, and it was wonderful. Now, but encourage her to do her 5th step with you, and at the same time including her 6th step, and maybe you end the 5th step by having her review her 6th step worked with you, and then you both together pray that 7th step prayer.
You can do that in you can do that in one meeting. It would
be wonderful.
6, 7.
I've not done it that way, but given the circumstances, it sounds like a wonderful adaptation.
Yeah, because I really would like to help her, and I can't help her unless she wants to help herself. And now she have been sober for 5 months. She haven't been that for 10 years. So
great, but see, you're not clear with me or with yourself. So perhaps you're not clear with her. She needs to do that 5th step, and
but I don't want. Yeah, but I'm frightened I'm stepping in on the other sponsor. But I said, if you clear it up with your other sponsor and say you want to take that 5th step with me, I guess it's fine. It's not
wait. I understand you're being respectful, but the other sponsor doesn't have time, and your person doesn't need the other person's permission. The big book is very clear. You choose whoever you want to hear your 5th step.
Exactly. But that was good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's up to her. It's private. We are equal.
Yeah. No, your instincts are very healthy. Have her do her 5th step with you.
All right, she's coming on Saturday, and I another one. If we have time, you said something very important one time about sex inventory.
Yeah,
It's not what you have done,
correct.
but it's your thinking about. It's your thinking.
Well,
I don't know
yes,
how to explain it. It's not how
well,
many people you have laid around with, which is the sixth step, sex step. It's what kind of, for example, attitude you have towards the man or something. You cleared it up for me once. This sex inventory.
the word I would use for the sex inventory is that you will discover principles, either
Yeah.
principles that you have that you're not using, or principles that you don't have that you want to incorporate into your life. But the whole point, I believe, of the sex inventory is to identify the principles that you want to incorporate in your life, as well as preparing your 8-step in terms of the negative impact some of your behavior has had on other people.
No, but then I think I'm happy. Thank you so much.
Well, they're wonderful. Well, no. Those were wonderful questions, and I'm glad that you brought them here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal.
You bet.
Hi, Herb. Thank you for this fabulous meeting. I miss you. My question is with regards to the first step. And the first step, I had a spiritual awakening in your course with regards to unmanageability. And I do often the set aside prayer. And the way the unmanageability for me is very much attuned to the way you teach it. But yet in the big book, it's quite different in terms of what is unmanageable with regards to alcoholism and what's unmanageable with my life as it is today as a sober alcoholic. And I was just wondering, in terms of reviewing that, going over that with somebody, the understanding of whether or not we explain it with alcoholism, or for me, it's the problem that needs the spiritual experience. It's a spiritual malady that I need on a daily basis in terms of addressing. So I wanted your feedback on that.
Well, I need to ask a couple of questions because I don't understand some of the words that you used. You said that the big book addresses unmanageability differently than I do.
Well, it's, I don't have my book here, but it refers to powerless over alcohol and that our lives became unmanageable. And I don't know what page it is, but they talk about the unmanageability with regards to specifically to the use and abuse of alcohol.
No, that's not unmanageability, that's addiction. So my sense is that you might be confusing things. Because
okay.
The big book doesn't actually formally address unmanageability from my standpoint, until you take a look at a couple pages in chapter 4 and a couple pages in chapter 5 that actually surface what unmanageability means. But Bill never unpacks unmanageability. Well, at least my interpretation of the big book. Bill does not structurally in the big book unpack unmanageability as I believe it's intended in step 1.
Okay.
Lots of people make the connection that we're powerless over our addiction or alcohol, and therefore our life's unmanageable. All right. But that's not the way it's structured. There's a dash there, not an and in step 1, which at least structurally means that it's a new thought. Addiction and unmanageability are not necessarily connected. Many people are in the program free of their addiction, and they're very angry, and they're very fearful, and they have complete distraction with some other forms of addiction. All right. They don't have a problem with their alcohol or drugs. That's been removed, but they have a problem with their unmanageability. Bill says at the end of step 9, page 84, 85, they really reinforce this, at least in my interpretation. He says we're placed in a position of neutrality with regard to our addiction, but we're not cured of our unmanageability. We have an obsession potential with regard to our mind, but we have a spiritual shield if we use steps 10, 11, and 12 to have an effective connection with power, so that the obsession bounces off of us. It does. We're not vulnerable to the obsession as long as we're connected to power.
Right.
So that's my interpretation of it. And so does that help clarify, or does that?
No,
That's what your concern is?
The way I've heard it for many years before being in your course was with regards to alcohol. So that's why
Well, of course, of course your life is going to be unmanageable if you're in your addiction, but that's not what the big book means.
Right.
He said, and in fact, he's very clear. Addiction is a symptom of the problem.
Right.
Spiritual malady is the reason for the problem.
Right.
And the way he puts it, although it's not structured this way, the bedevilments are the manifestation of the spiritual malady. The description of the spiritual malady is pages 60 to 62. And at the end of that second paragraph on page 62, he says, and we can't even reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. Self-centeredness is the heart of unmanageability. Self-centeredness is the spiritual malady. Self-centeredness is the defect or deficiency of our willpower. Our willpower is not sufficient on its own power. It needs to be connected to a power other than ourselves so that our willpower will be effective. Yeah. Well, at least this is my interpretation.
Right. No, I totally agree, because that's what I got from it, but it's not really spoken of around here.
Well, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it very boldly. There's a lot of ignorance in the rooms, and I use the term, it's the best kept secret in the rooms, that unmanageability is the spiritual malady, and that steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis is the antidote to unmanageability.
Agree.
There's so many people that just don't know that, and that's my how would you say, that's my cause.
Yeah, because I share that a lot now in meetings and with people, and they kind of, are scratching their heads, but yet everybody relates.
Well, just be clear about it, but don't be righteous and don't be an evangelist. I don't tilt at windmills. I share my experience. I don't need to be right. I do not need to be right. I want to be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, wonderful way to end our conversation today, because it's, from my standpoint, it's the heart of the matter. And in everything that we've ever talked about here, well, this is my current sort of focus. Consciousness is the most important thing. Consciousness. That Bill talked about awakening. That's the point of step 12. Having had an awakening as the result of these steps. What we're talking about is becoming conscious, staying conscious, sustaining consciousness, and expanding consciousness. That's the whole purpose of this process, is to become as conscious as we can, as aware as we can. You might have seen, and I'll have it sent out to the group just because it's a focus on that consciousness. It's a recent reflection. I spent about 6 months fine tuning, and it's God is consciousness. It's a kind of a new insight that I'm sort of discerning and kind of percolating in. God is consciousness. And the more conscious we become, the more participation we have in the consciousness that is God. So this is the vision. This is the awakening. This is the turning. This is the transformation. It's a modification of the St. Francis prayer. Spirit of the universe, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to life. Life right now, present life, here and now. Thanks, everybody. I hope it was helpful. I believe it was. Thank you, everybody.